Cecil's my friend. You forgot your microphone, so there is no sound. Sorry, everyone, for
Hello,
being away.
friends of the Open Movement. I'm sorry for that loss in audio. I'm delighted to welcome you all to episode 16 of WikiAfrica Hour, which is a podcast dedicated to exploring the stories behind Africa's identities. Why are these identities and brands important? And why is it important that we can identify them as Wikimedia? But first, we should define what a brand or what identity is. Wiktionary defines a brand as a symbolic identity represented by a name and or a logo which indicates a certain product or the service to the public. It further states that a brand is the public image or reputation and recognized typical style of an individual or group. In a world that keeps evolving digitally, graphic and sound logos and other forms of brand identity have become an essential component that helps the public to identify a trusted source and deliver on its expectations. As new consumption platforms such as Alexa and Siri become commonplace, new ways identifying brands needs to be explored. Both for-profit and non-profits alike must swim this tide of digital branding in order to own and retain their respective niches and spaces, or risk going extinct. The Wikimedia Foundation's projects, Wikipedia, Wikicodes, Wikidata, etc., all have visual identities, logos, brand colors, fonts, and the whole embodiment of designs on their respective sites. Some of the identities have undergone modifications over the years. Now the movement is discussing the need for a sound logo, the first of its kind in the Wikimedia movement. Today we have invited experts from the Wikimedia ecosystem to help us understand the different brand identities being represented by various Wikimedia projects and how they have changed over time and what we can look forward to in the future. First, we have Erina Mukuta. Erina is a Wikimedian and co-founder of Wikimedia Community User Group Uganda. She lives in Uganda and has been part of several projects to increase content and knowledge sharing. She has worked with several communities in Uganda, example schools, organizations, and other Wikimedia chapters, etc. She is currently the Wikimedia Sound Logo Project Community Liaison. And then we have Zack McCUne. Zack began editing Wikipedia in 2005 and attended his first Wikimedia event at the British Museum in 2011. As the director of brand at the Wikimedia Foundation, he leads a team of designers, creative leaders, and brand strategists that we call the Brand Studio, whose goal is to raise awareness and usage of Wikimedia projects around the world, expanding the global reach of free knowledge. Hello, Zach. We will be starting with you first on the first panel.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of WikiAfrica Hour, episode 16.
Thank you so much, Zach. We have seen your beautiful stamps over the years at the various Wikimanias, but who are you? What drives you?
That's a fair question. Well, who am I? My name is Zack. I identify as a creative person, a person who loves to create visual objects, storytelling objects, sometimes take photographs, sometimes produce films. And indeed, yes, I enjoy making stamps. I have a few here that I made for Wikimania in South Africa. This is for Wikimania in Sweden. I also have a stamp I made for Berlin for the Wikimedia Summit there, as it always is there. Fundamentally, I believe that creativity can be done collectively, not just individually, and that means that we are all more creative together. That's brought me to really love the Wikimedia movement. I've been working at the foundation now for a stunning, surprising 7 years. And in that time, I've done all sorts of collective creative exercises, from making ads to explain what Wikipedia is in Nigeria, Iraq, India, Mexico, to creating identities for our events like Wikimania. And now we are embarking on something totally new, really remarkable, which is explaining to the world who our movement is and what our free knowledge content is with no visual, right? And actually a very different kind of challenge indeed. We have to create a sound for marking our content instead of using the URL, a logo, or a name. It's an exciting moment, and I'm incredibly grateful that Erina is leading this work.
Wow. Thank you for showing us what these stamps look like handy. And then, I mean, stamps, logos, designs. Wikimedia projects are being represented by various logos and designs so far. Zach, could you share with us how these logo representations for various Wikimedia projects were chosen in the past? Maybe how they've been modified too?
Yes, I would love to do that. Okay, let me share some slides here to give you a history of Wikimedia identities. It's a lot of joy to share these with you, because I see my role as director of brand as stewarding Wiki brands, but not creating them, right? Like, they are created by the movement, and then they are stewarded by the brand studio. Let's take as an example the Wikipedia brand. As we heard in that definition, a brand is a logo and a name and the associated public image that's constructed by both of them. And the Wikipedia brand is now over 21 years old. But where did it come from? What are these different parts? Well, let's start with the name, Wikipedia. It's two different things fused together, Wiki and Pedia. The second part is probably the more familiar to people because it derives from encyclopedia, which is a Greek word for general education, and it came to be embodied in a series of objects like long sets of books or even CD-ROM editions of collective knowledge. Wikipedia, of course, is a revolution on that type of format, offering general education online across millions of entries. And it's something that we know people are using every day, all the time, and keeping it up to date with 350 edits a minute. It's just one of the most remarkable things happening in the digital world. So Wiki, where does that come from? These four letters are now part of almost every movement brand we have. But it actually comes from Hawaiian, of all places, and it means quick. It's something that if you travel to Hawaii, you will find on the buses in the Honolulu airport, Wiki, meaning very quick. And it was selected by Ward Cunningham, a software designer, to describe the software he was creating where people could quickly edit and change things collectively. It wasn't a way to publish things on the internet one at a time, but to actually quickly be able to edit and update it. So Wiki software is where we derive the name Wikipedia. So together, that's where we've come to as far as a name. But the logo, okay, the logo, this thing we sometimes call the puzzle globe. Where did that come from? Well, we had a contest. The Wikimedia movement had a contest back in 2003. here are some of the entries for that contest. And this contest was an open call. What should the logo for this project be? And there were over 150 responses from around the world. This was the winner. This was the winner here. And you can see the user who created this amazing tradition. It was a open call for submissions and then a vote, right? And this has been true to how the Wikimedia movement has been making logos and coming up with project names since the beginning. But that wasn't the end. It actually evolved from that place on to be what we have today, actually single glyphs on each tile and with a silver color. And that is, again, further refined in today to be flatter, easier to shrink down in size. You know, we're always evolving our brands to make sure they work for where people are using them. So now we have this incredible brand that appears 30 million times a day. That's how many times that logo is served out to the world. And it's mentioned in 70 news articles across the world in different languages on different topics every day. It's just remarkable how much use that brand gets. And it's a credit to the fact that it was made by the movement. Now, if you were looking at that contest, you would see that there were 3 finishers. Number 1, number 2, number 3. And each one of these finishers has actually ended up being an important part of our brand ecosystem. So number 1, the puzzle globe, that's become the Wikipedia logo. But number 2 has become the Wikimedia logo, the logo for our entire movement. Sometimes this is called the roundel, and sometimes it's called the Wikimedia bug because it kind of looks like a bug. Other people see someone reading, or people who enjoy cocktails see a martini glass shape. The third finisher has become the source for MediaWiki software. So it's an amazing way in which these logos from 2003 continue to shape what we do today. Overall, we have 13 plus major projects. Here's some of them that represent free knowledge projects that are part of the Wikimedia movement. And if you look at them, just like relax your eyes a little bit, try to figure out what's common about them, right? I think that's one of the most interesting things is that if you encounter any one of these parts of our movement, how would you know it's related? That's one thing that we're always talking about with volunteers is like, how would you know that you're part of a movement? It's a big question we have. And what we've discovered is that there's a few things that are shared across the brands. First, they're all doing the same mission, making knowledge free all around the world. The second is that there's often, not exclusively, but often a color palette that's sometimes called the Wikimedia color palette. 3 colors, green, blue, red. And these actually derive out of the software. A blue comes from our links in our projects. When you click on a link that works, it's blue. When you click on a link that doesn't work, it's red. And there used to be green links, but that's some deep history that you can find out about. And finally, open question to everyone. Think about it for a moment. What is the thing that is shared across all of our movement names? It's 4 letters. Everybody knows it. In fact, the public use it as a nickname for us all the time. It's Wiki. It's even used here in WikiAfrica Hour. So Wiki is something that we found that 92% of internet users associate with Wikipedia and the Wikimedia movement. It's something that we're continuing to expand and using, and I always love when it's used as the beginning of names. And there's a few other brands that use it because this software is used across the world, including WikiLeaks and WikiHow and WikiBuy, but really the overwhelming majority of people think of us when they think of the word wiki. I think that's a place where I can leave it as we start to think about the next thing we're going to make from scratch, which is a sound logo. We have no sound logo now, but we need one. Let me leave it there.
The rundown, seeing how the contest led to the very first Wikipedia logo. User Paulus Magnus, you are a legend for coming up with that. And then I couldn't help but find that it's very humorous for people to think that the Wikimedia logo has some, martini content in there. Perhaps we would love to see the world through the eyes of such people. Thank you so much, Zach. That's quite an interesting rundown. And we've seen how perhaps the Wikipedia logo has changed over the years. Uh, Zach, 2 years ago, there was a move to change the brand name entirely, which didn't go very well. I understand you were the lead on the project. Can you briefly talk to us about what happened and perhaps the consequences, if
Yes,
any?
indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, 2 years ago we had a project where we examined the center name of our movement, Wikimedia, right? And I want to say that there's always work happening on our brands across the movement. People are always updating the logo and the name that represents their user group, their chapter, an event they're working on. We know that these happen across the movement, and they always have to happen in the same way, openly and collectively. So when we were examining if the movement name should change, if it should actually be centered on Wikipedia, which is better known than Wikimedia, we brought this suggestion, this proposal out to movement volunteers, and we heard very strongly back, no, do not change this. And the evolutions from that no, that clear answer, do not change this, not only have stopped any work on that kind of a change and pushing us to celebrate and adopt that we're going to continue to be the Wikimedia movement. That's what we're going to emphasize, and we're going to continue to emphasize that roundel shape as something we want the world to recognize more. We actually want to promote that more so people recognize that and think, when I see that, I think of knowledge and I think of free knowledge. But it's also changed how we approach some of these collective processes, right? We want to actually make sure that we're socializing the problem for a brand issue before we get to solutions. So we have a lot of time to discuss collectively across the movement a problem we're trying to solve before we jump to here's a solution. And that's the way in which, for the Sound Logo project, you can see that our consultations on this began actually almost a year ago. A little about November, we started talking to people and saying, we're starting to realize that 27% of the internet is getting knowledge from a voice assistant, and Wikimedia is not really well attributed there. It's not credited well, right? What do you think we should do, right? And we started to have those discussions again almost a year ago. And some of the answers that came back have shaped exactly what we're doing now, which is having an open call for ideas for marking ourselves in audio environments. So the way we see it is that work always has to happen openly, it has to happen collectively, and that's what we're trying to do right now with the Sound Logo project.
Interesting. I can't help but appreciate the constant, which is being open and adding a bit fun around it by making it a contest. And that way we also make sure that only the best of the best get to be selected. Thank you so much, Zach. Director of brand, that's quite a huge role, if you ask me. Heading up the Wikimedia brand, it must be a fascinating but yet challenging task. How did you land in this role, Zach?
It is the honor of my life to work in this role. My background is in sociology and digital marketing. So I actually studied creative communities online as a master's student at the University of Cambridge. And when I was there, I started to study a community of people who were sharing photographs online through their phones. It was a very small community when I started to interview people there, but as I continued my studies, that community exploded. You probably know it now. It's called Instagram. And so when I published my research, I actually had authored the first academic study of Instagram. And this led me to being called by a lot of marketing agencies who said, we want to know how our brand should show up on Instagram. We want to know how our brand should show up on social media platforms broadly. And so that academic work pulled me into a professional career, 5-6 years in New York, where I was actually representing brands and helping them think about the ways in which they should use social media. But I had always been a Wikimedian, and so when I heard during that time that the Wikimedia Foundation was looking for someone to help expand their own brand representation on social media and beyond, I applied, and I was incredibly lucky to be selected at the time for a very small role. It was called Global Audiences. I was managing how we would relate to global audiences where we didn't hear much or didn't do much or didn't know much. And I knew that social media could help connect Wikimedia to people in those places. And so that was the beginning of my career at Wikimedia. And it has evolved to include this incredible team of professionals who I just am so honored to work with. They are designers, they are writers, they are strategists, and we see ourselves as offering brand and creative services to the movement, from making Wikimania identities to crafting different presentation templates and guides that we put on Meta for anyone to use. And of course, now convening this search for the sound logo, we see ourselves as the facilitators for this process. It is really quite a role. I'm constantly surprised and honored to be in this challenge because there's so much to do. It's way more than any one person or one team could do, which is why it has to be done collectively. Most brands manage themselves like very tight, very closed. You think about something like, say, Coca-Cola, they establish almost a brand police, a brand authority. This is the only color of red we use. This is the only font we use. This is the only logo. And everyone asks that authority kind of for permission to use it. We have the exact opposite model, right? Like everyone in this movement is a brand ambassador. They are making brand materials, they're adapting it to their needs, and we see ourselves as a resource that can help those people, but we're not the control. We are a decentralized movement on branding, and so we offer a series of resources people can use, modify, and extend, and share back to MetaWiki and Commons so other people can use it too.
Thank you for that rundown. I could particularly take out a very amazing statement you just made. Everyone in the movement is a brand ambassador, one way or the other. Yes, that's very, very relatable, owing to how we make sure that things that we use also go under the CC license, which is also free and can be remixed from time to time. Thank you so much, Zach. And then from managing the global audience to managing the brand studio, which falls under the tasks that you handle. What is the brand studio? Could you explain the purpose?
Yes. The Brand Studio is a part of the Wikimedia Foundation's communications department. And we focus on communications work that needs creative development, which is often visual design, copywriting. It can include video creation. Video production is something we do. But then we also have a set of people who think about our brand and research how our brand is showing up in the world, and even where our brand might be really strong, really weak, or under threat. I'll say here that one of the things that our brand staff recently did was looked at how popular Wikipedia is in Russia. Now, we all know there's so much happening that's incredibly sad in the Russian-Ukraine war, this conflict that has erupted. And because of this conflict and reporting on this conflict, we've actually received multiple threats by the Russian government to block the site's access to Russian internet users. When that kind of threat happens, there's a lot of parts of the Wikimedia movement that respond. And in the Wikimedia Foundation, our legal team are incredibly active in looking at that threat, as well as the engineering teams who think about what would that block mean? How would people continue to access our servers? On the brand side, we look at how is Wikipedia viewed? You know, how well established is it? Do people think of it as a Western service? Do they think of it as something made by Russian people for Russian people? And what we found in doing some brand research was that actually the Wikipedia brand is possibly the most popular in Russia. It's more popular in Russia basically than every other market we routinely measure, which is Germany, the UK, Nigeria, India, Mexico, Brazil. We do a number of diagnostics twice a year, and we found that the Russian internet user actually feels the most care about Wikipedia, and it's one of the reasons why we think the government has hesitated. I knock on wood because I hope it continues, but we know that they've hesitated to block the site. It's actually because of the popularity, the belief in that site, and that's because of how Wikimedia volunteers in Russia have built that brand, right? As I said, brand ambassadors. That site is so incredibly useful and popular and important to Russian internet users that it's not like the foundation is the kind of counterpoint. It's actually the meaning that was created by Wikimedians in Russia. So to come back to your question, you know, what we have here, we have 9 staff members with specialties in design, writing, and brand strategy. And we're a resource for the foundation and for the wider movement. A project I wish I had, we can actually find it, I'll send the links. We just helped Wikimedia Algeria, also known as WikiDZ. They wanted to update their identity. And so we took the identity they had, we found them a designer who is based in Algeria, and we did a series of updates, examining possibilities, and then they selected one of the possibilities to use. So you may have seen it during Wikimania, they launched this new identity, and it features the fennec, an amazing fox. Just actually, it's a really cute animal, and it's always been a symbol of Algeria, and so they have factored it more into their identity now, kind of making it a little bit more minimal than it was before, but connecting back to the movement. Like, you know, you always want to say, how does it connect to the movement? Well, we've continued to emphasize Wiki. That continues to be a critical part. And the typeface, Montserrat, is something used across the movement. It's a free-to-use type. It's the type used in Wikimedia Foundation, in Wikimedia South Africa, and Wikimedia Deutschland. WikiDZ adopted that typeface as well during that design level. Oh yeah, good. See, we've got some folks here from WikiDZ. Hello, everyone. Good to see you.
That's amazing. Learning that, I mean, aside being designers and strategists, that research also falls within the scope of the work the brand studio gets to do. And I must say, Zach, it's ironic that Wikipedia has the level of popularity you guys discovered in somewhere like Russia. But that's an interesting detail to have. And the last question for you, Zach. It sounds like quite a team to assemble. Talk about designers, creative leaders, and brand strategists. And now I will add brand researchers. How are these people selected? What criteria must they meet to be able to join the brand studio?
Yes. So when we hire, we post our job publicly. We make an open global call for staff to join, candidates to join the Wikimedia Foundation brand studio. And, you know, the skills we look at, basically, there's 3 qualities that are always being looked for. One is specialty in the job description, right? And that might be specialty in design. It might be specialty in brand strategy. It might be specialty in copywriting to describe brands across international markets. So we always want that specialty, right? But the second thing we want is for you to appreciate that this is a collective movement. It's an open movement. It's a participatory movement. And that means that it's not enough to just have a lot of commercial experience, which a lot of candidates come to us with. They say, I've managed brand for major commercial brands. And we say, okay, when have you worked collectively with groups of people? When have you done a project in the public? When have you not shared work back to a single client, but actually shared work back to lots of groups and said, what do you all collectively think about it? How can it be better? We always want to have that experience. And then, of course, the third quality is if you have experience with Wikimedia itself, that's a huge perk. We want to know that people have been readers, users, beneficiaries of Wikipedia. They're familiar with where we stand in the world, but even better, if they've contributed as an editor, a photographer, a volunteer to the Wikimedia movements. That's an amazing feature. So those are the things we always are looking for when we do a job search. And I'll tell you, we have that same approach to when we hire contractors or agencies, because we're incredibly lucky to work with creative houses, production specialists around the world. The staff we have cannot be experienced enough to make an authentic message to the places we work. So when we do an ad campaign and develop a video in Iraq, we need a specialist, somebody there who's either an individual or an agency that knows that market well, but again, always appreciates that we're not like other brands, right? Like they have to think of their work as happening openly and collectively, where feedback comes from everybody to make it better.
Nice. Of course, anybody who is going to work within the open movement has to be open himself or herself. Yes, it's a very strong feature when it comes to selecting somebody who perhaps should be on a team such as the brand team. Thank you so much, Zack McCUne. You have provided quite an insight by responding to these questions. We are looking forward to perhaps someone having questions from the audience for you during the Q&A segment of the episode. We now move to the next panel with Erina Mukuta to tell us more about this Wikimedia Sound logo. Hello, Erina.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Please briefly introduce yourself, Erina.
Hi, so my name's Erina Mukuta. I'm from Uganda. I'm a Wikimedian with the Wikimedia Community User Group Uganda. Within my community, I'm a project lead. I work with Wiki Education. But for today, I'm a Wikimedia Sound Logo community liaison for Sub-Saharan Africa. And I will be talking about the Sound Logo, what it is, how you can participate, where to go when you need help. Yeah, that's it about me.
Erina, this project aimed at finding a unique sonic logo for Wikimedia projects. For the benefit of the audience, please first explain what a sound logo is, and do you have examples you can show us?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Okay, hold on. I have pasted the link of the slides, if you could help me share them.